Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our RunCam split mounted up, and to mount that we're just going to take some 20mm nylon screws and some nylon nuts, and we're going to secure the screws down, and the split's going to sit right on top of there. Alright, so we'll put our split on there, like so. And then just make sure we have enough clearance underneath. Yeah, so we'll probably have to use some rubber spacers, which actually come with the split, so that's handy. So we'll throw those on. Alright, so that looks good. We got clearance. So now we're going to take our little TPU 30mm to 20mm mounts, and we're going to throw those guys on. So these actually have a 2mm nut inside of them, so we're going to screw down into that. So you want the nut on the bottom, and let's see. So I think we're going to take the V out from the split, run that to the V in on the flight controller, and then that's going to give us all of our OSD readouts. Alright, so we'll secure these guys down with a nut, and then we'll clip off the excess, because that's going to give the flight controller enough room to sit on there, because the flight controller actually sticks out past 20mm. Now we can clip off the excess on these screws. Just take some flush cutters, cut those guys off. And then we're left with that. So now we should be able to put the flight controller on, no problem. So it's still hitting the screws. Let's try this side up. Let's see. Yeah, I think we need this side up, 'cause it's got all the pads on it, so we might have to put some spacers in there. I think that's what these little guys are for here. So let's see. It's okay if it's touching, because this is all nylon and TPU, so it's not going to short anything. I'm not worried about that. So let's take our M2 screws, which are these guys here. And we'll put our spacer on. And then we'll grab our M2 driver. That's not M2. So we want to make sure we catch with that nut, which it looks like we did. And that's perfect. That's got some clearance. It's not touching anything, so that'll work. So this is going to be a little tricky, because actually it's not M2. There we go, that's it. We have to get all these spacers on before we screw them down, so let's see. Looks like they'll stay on, so that's perfect. Okay, so we'll take 3 more screws, 3 more spacers. Yeah, they'll stay on there, so that helps a lot. That's why I love Larry. He thinks about everything. Alright, last one. Last spacer. Sweet. Alright, so we got all those in there. see, which way do we want to mount it? Let's just try this. So I just want to mock this up first. I know I'm going to have to take it back off to get to some of these solder pads, but I just want to mock it up and make sure everything fits in here before we move forward. All right, nice and tight. So that's how our stack's gonna look. We'll probably put our RX inside of here, and then we'll put our Unify right on top. And that should be good. So let's see. The only weird thing is that the motor wires are going to be coming down the arm and then kind of popping up here, so that's kind of weird, but we'll make it work. So let's go ahead and pre-tin these pads and figure out how the hell this... Alright, so for our RX, we're going to be using the Spectrum telemetry receiver. This is going to fit nicely in between of our 20 mil or 32 to 20 mil standoffs. So we're going to throw that right down there. And let's see, we're going to try to get it to sit flush, hopefully. So maybe we'll stick it right on the side there. And I think what we'll do is put some a thin layer of double-sided tape. We don't want it too thick, so we'll throw it right there. And then we should be able to slide these over to mount the flight controller on top. So let's get that stuck down, make sure none of the metal is touching the RunCam split. So we'll take some of our thin VHB. We don't want to use the thick stuff, so that's going to create too much of a gap. And then we'll try to measure it out exactly to the size of this as best we can. All right. So we'll stick this on the back. Just make sure it's covering all of the components. Looks good. All right. And we're just going to stick it right down there like so. Okay, and then we're going to need to solder on some signal, power, and ground cables. So let's do that real quick. Get those soldered on so we don't have to worry about them later on. Alright, so we have our D-pinned Spectrum telemetry receiver. So we're going to put our ground, our power, and our signal wires on now. So we'll just tin these pads up. So this receiver is really nice because it gets really thin when you de-pin it. So I took off this little JST plug here, and now we can just direct solder the ground, the power, 5 volts. This guy runs on 5 volts. And our signal, it's going to be our S-bus. Alright, so that guy's wired up. Then we can just connect this to the flight controller when we get to that point. But I want to see now if we can get the flight controller mounts over there. That looks good. This side will be good for sure. And then let's see if we can cover these up. Cool, so we'll put our antennas on the receiver. All right. right, that's looking pretty clean. So we got our RX sitting right on top of the RunCam split, and then we have our wires coming off the RX, and we'll solder those on in a little bit. But that's about as thin as it's gonna get with your RX, so I'm pretty happy with that. And the flight controller should sit right on top of there. All right, so on the split, we're gonna need VN, video, and ground. So we're gonna solder some wires onto that. So we got our VN. So we'll just take some more of our silicone wire and we're gonna solder that to the VCC on the split. And then we'll take our ground. So we're gonna run this straight off the battery. So this can run 5 to 17 volts. We're gonna be running 3S on this build, so no worries there. The RunCam Split 1 had to have a 5 volt power source, but this one, cool feature of the RunCam Split 2 is that it can run up to 4S. And we're gonna be running a TBS Unify Pro HV, so we're gonna be able to run 500, 800 milliwatts. So that's going to be really, really handy. So we're going to need to run the video out, or the video in on the VTX to the VTX pin on the flight controller stack. So we'll do that later, but right now we're going to need to solder our video cable to the RunCam Split 2. That's going to go to the video out from the RunCam, and then that's going to go onto the cam port on our flight controller, and then the flight controller is going to run the OSD and everything, and that's going to send the feed to our goggles from the VTX. So I think at this point we can mount the flight controller and start soldering up to that. I might need to extend these motor wires. That's going to be kind of a pain in the butt. Let's see. Yeah, that's going to be fun. Alright, I'm going to have to extend all these motor wires. That's going to suck. But let's get the flight controller mounted to these TPU standoffs, and then we can start wiring that guy up. So we're going to take our button head, I think these are 8 mils, and we're going to take our little spacers that Falcon Multirotors included with the kit. Alright, that's looking good. The cool thing about this is now our flight controller is soft mounted, it's just floating there. So what we're going to have to do is extend these motor wires, which is really going to suck, and I'm not going to put you guys through that torture, so I'm going to go ahead and extend these and catch back up with you once that's done. Alright, welcome back. We got our motor wires extended, so now what we're going to do is trim them to length, and we're going to take some zip ties and secure the motor wires to the arm so they stay out of the way of the props, and then that way we can make sure we have enough length to wire them up to the ESCs. So we'll just throw that on there. Like so. And then we'll start measuring these guys out. So we're going to go left to right. Let's see. So I think what we'll do is like that. So we'll just trim that guy. And then we should be able to take the other 2 wires and trim them just a little bit longer than the previous one that we just cut. And then we can clip off the tip. And then we'll tin these guys up. So we'll do the other 3 motors and then we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so now that we have all 4 of our motors wired up, we're going to go ahead and hook up our spectrum telemetry receiver. So that's these 3 wires here that we direct soldered to it earlier. So we got our S-bus, our 5 volt, and our ground here on the edge. So we're going to take the yellow wire, we're going to connect that to the S-bus. Leave a little bit of slack in case we need to flip the flight controller over. So we'll just solder that right onto the flight controller. Then we'll take our red wire, that's going to go to our 5 volt, and that's going to power the receiver with 5 volts. This flight controller does have an onboard 5 volt regulator, which is really handy. Oops. And then we're going to take our black wire, and that's going to be our ground. We're going to connect that to the last pad, which is our negative on the flight controller. Alright, so that's our receiver. Right there, we got the yellow going to the S-bus, the red going to the 5 volt, and the black going to the ground. Now we need to take the video, which is our yellow cable that we have coming off the RunCam split that says video. That's going to go to the cam on our flight controller. So we're going to measure that out, solder that on. Alright, and then we have our power and our ground for the split, which are going to go back here to the power and ground on the flight controller. We're just going to run this off the direct battery power. Alright, it's coming together. So now we got to wire up our TBS Unify. So we need to connect the yellow cable to the VTX on the flight controller. So if you guys can see that right there. VTX, and then the black to the negative, the red to the positive. And since we're powering the split is powered off of the battery, we don't need to worry about powering it off of the 5 volt rig on the Unify. So we're just going to need these 3 cables here, the voltage in, the ground, and the video. Alright, so we got our XT30. We're going to get this guy soldered up. So we're going to take some red and black silicone wire and solder it up to the positive and negative on this guy. So we'll pre-tin the pins, and we'll grab some red wire. Doesn't need to be super thick. We're going to be using 18 gauge wire. So we'll get that tinned up. So, let's grab our rig. And we're going to connect the tail right on the back here. And let's see, I think we're gonna want it, it's pretty long. Yeah, I think that'll work. All right, so that's gonna go right down here like this. All right, so now we should be able to plug this in and hopefully everything works out. So let me grab my smoke stopper and we'll give that a test. All right, so we're just gonna take our little 2S battery, plug it in, and we should get all the beeps. Okay, the RunCam split is activated. Our Unify is working. Flight controller is working, ESC is all beeped. So let's go ahead and see if this camera's working. Let me grab my monitor. All right, so we have all lights are go and we have video. So this is the default OSC that comes with the flight controller. We're gonna go into beta flight and remove the crosshairs and maybe move some stuff around. So you can see up here it says no card. We don't have an SD card in the split yet, but we will put that in. On the RunCam Split 2, you can actually slide the card into the side, so you don't need to take your flight controller off to remove the SD card, which is really nice. So yeah, everything looks good. We're gonna throw the frame together, and then we're gonna go into beta flight and play with all the settings there, and then we should be ready to go. Okay, so we need to mount our RunCam Split on the camera mounts. So we're gonna have to use the longer the M2 screws. I use these guys. All right, let's see. It's gonna be a little tricky. All right, so tighten these down. Looks good. Then we're gonna take our Unify and we're gonna just double-sided tape that to the top plate. Loosen this up a little bit to get the camera mounts into the carbon. There we go. Okay. Then we're going to take our flathead screws and we'll secure the standoffs. So that looks good, everything fits. We got pigtail now, we just need to run our RX antennas off the arms and we'll get into beta flight and get that all set up now. So we're gonna weigh this, so we got the 850 Tattoo 3S weighing in at 78 grams. The frame 105, so with the battery we're looking at 184. That's a sub 250 HG quad. Alright, so we got it all together. We got the props on, we got the RX antennas mounted off the top and off the rear. We're doing the L-shaped pattern with the Spectrum telemetry receiver. That's going to be the optimal layout for your RX, so we don't have any fail-safes. For props, we're going to be using the Rotor X 3020, these little guys here. So those just mount with some M2 style screws. You just need 2 screws for each motor. I think about 8 mil will do it. You'll notice that these motors have 4 holes, 1, 2, and then 3, 4, just for different mounting patterns for different style props. Our VTX is just sitting right on top there. We have smart audio connected, but if we need to change the channels manually, we can definitely get in there and access it, no problem, and still see the LED. We can access the SD card for the RunCam split right here. Pop that out. So that's good to go. And then we can also access the buttons on the RunCam split, the recording, start, stop, and the OSD button as well. And we have our RunCam split camera mounted right in the front, fits perfectly. Looks like we can get about 45-degree camera angle, which will be plenty. Alright, so for our battery, we're going to be using the 853S from Tattoo. This is a 75C discharge rate. So we were actually able to fit our battery strap in. This is just a small strap from Multirotor Mania. And put a little foam pad on there just so we don't have our batteries slip out. Strap that back around. Alright, so we have connection with our radio, DSMX, full bars, and we should be able to spin this guy up. Pretty good. Alright, so now what we can do is let's try to get this RunCam split recording. So if we take a look at the instructions, long press the power shutter button. Video mode, camera status, light, blue LED 3, photo mode, green LED 2, OSD setup mode, LED 4. Okay, so right now we are on blue. Long press the power, okay, we need to long press the back button. Okay, so long press this middle button. That's gonna turn it on. And then to change modes, we're gonna press the power. Okay, this is gonna stop recording, the same button that just powered it on. So we should see the record light go off, and then if we hit it again, we should see the record symbol on the OSC. That's perfect. Alright, I think that's pretty much it. So we can go ahead and fly this girl and try to get some 1080p footage for you guys on the micro. Alright, so we're going to go flight test the Splitshark. We're going over to USF campus right now. Got 4 batteries. Try to tune this girl up, get a good tune for you guys, and then get some 1080p footage from the micro with some tight gaps. It'll be awesome.